The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday, April 5th. I am in Israel, as the title suggests. Sorry not to have done shows for such a long time, but travel, family, parties, bad internet, all of that have basically led to the fact that it's been very difficult to get a show off the ground. But here we are. I'm glad we finally get a chance. Now, I'm warning you in advance, just to set expectations appropriately, that I have no idea how this is going to go from the perspective of the tech. Like Wi-Fi here, I think the technical term is sucks, and so I'm just not sure how it's going to go. So hopefully we'll be fine, and we'll have a smooth show. A lot has happened over the last few days since I did the last show. Of course, we had a Liberation Day, so I hope all of you feel very liberated, much more liberated than you were before Liberation Day. That was the purpose, right? Audio is great, Ryan says. Hopefully video is okay. So we're going to talk about Liberation Day. We'll talk about the tariffs. I have to say, I'm not sure what to say, because I've said it all, right? I mean, we've been talking about tariffs for, well, technically, we've been talking tariffs for 8 years, since really Trump started running for office. I've explained tariffs in detail. I've explained trade in detail. I've explained my objections to trade, and my objections to trade. God, it's late here. It's past 10 p.m. at night, so if I slip here and there, so I've explained my objections to tariffs. I've explained how trade works, how tariffs work, how tariffs are uniformly destructive, no matter what rate they're set, and no matter whether they're reciprocal or not reciprocal. We'll talk about reciprocity in a minute. So there's not a lot of new things for me to say, but it's good to say them again, because nobody listens anyway. So maybe if I repeat myself enough, people will actually listen, and I'll get to change people's minds about all of this. This is more Trump insanity. We've talked about Trump insanity for 9 years. So this is just me. So today is just me basically saying, told you so. Remember all the things I told you? They're all coming true. And it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good, because there's a sense in which the worst of the things that I told you would happen are happening. And yeah, we will see the consequences. The consequences are not good. I don't see a positive outcome. I see lots of negatives. Let's see. I will try to do a show tomorrow as well. And then, let's see, Monday, maybe Monday, certainly not Tuesday. But starting Wednesday, we should have daily shows until the following week, and then I travel again. Anyway, the next 2 months are going to be on and off, on off constantly. So I apologize in advance for the fact that we're not going to be on a regular schedule. We're just not. I'm traveling a lot, pretty much every other week. I'm traveling until the end of May, and then, good news. I don't know, you guys, good news. You remember my courses for Jordan Peterson? So they've just hired me to do 3 more courses. So I will be doing 3 more courses for the Peterson Academy. I'll be doing a course on the corporation. I'll be doing a course on globalization, on trade. I'm so excited about that one. I'm going to do a whole course on the history, economics, and morality of trade. So that's going to be cool. And then we're going to do a 3rd course is on money, history, and functioning in economics of money. So those are going to be 3 courses I'm going to be developing and teaching for the Peterson Academy. I'm also going to give you guys a link so that if you register for the Peterson Academy, you do it through this link, then they pay me a certain amount of money per person who registered. All right, so let's step back and talk about, drum roll, Liberation Day. God. So this will go down in history. I'm just going to make the statement now, and those of you who are still around in 5-10 years, you will call up the show and tell me how right I was again. This is going to be called one of the dumbest, stupidest, economic acts of any American president, really in American history. It's dumb and stupid because, I won't say it's the worst overall because, FDR did worse things, but for everything that FDR did and anything that Johnson did and even everything that Nixon did and everything that these presidents did that was really, really bad from an economic policy perspective, it all had some kind of rationale, usually appeasing some interest group or significant interest group, but usually helping some people. But here, there's no upside. There's no upside. It's an economic disaster. It'll bring no benefits. You'll be able to take no credit for anything that happens. Nothing good is actually going to happen. It's going to set back the U.S. economy significantly. Whether we go into a recession or not, this is going to dramatically hurt economic growth. It's going to set us backwards. It's going to actually hurt wages. It's going to hurt productivity. There's just nothing good here. Nothing. And no particular special interest groups, except maybe steel manufacturers, are going to be happy about this. It's not like, I don't know, Medicare or Social Security. You do that, at least, elderly people are supportive of you. But here there's no large electoral vote in the long run that's going to be happy with you. Now, it's true, MAGA, it doesn't care. MAGA, Make America Great Again movement, they will vote for Trump. They will love Trump. They will support Trump. They think Trump is amazing. They love tariffs for reasons we'll talk about in a few minutes. But from an economic perspective, there's nothing. And MAGA will lose from an economic perspective. I think MAGA will lose. The people who support Trump, the real supporters, the passionate supporters, are the people who are going to lose the most here. This is going to be destructive to the working class. So, somebody called it, I think economist Tyler Cowen called it, this is an own goal, one of the worst own goals that any president has ever done from an economic perspective. And I think he's absolutely right. It's unnecessary, stupid, isn't addressing any particular real need that people have out there that politically you need to satisfy. And of course, from an economic perspective, it's just a disaster. It's just nothing good about it. There's very few things, the government can do that are this bad. And so the market was down, 10+% over the 2 days. The day he made the announcement, which was on Thursday, he made the announcement at 4 p.m. just after the market closed. The market was up a little bit that day because the expectation was, okay, he's done all the bluster, he's made all these statements, he's gone out there and expressed himself, and now everybody, over the last 24 hours, probably everybody's moderated him. He's got together with his advisors, and they've changed the plan. They've made it more moderate. The tariffs, they can't be as bad as he presented them. It's so economically illiterate. It's so economically stupid No, Trump won't do it. The people around him, they'll stop him. They'll stop Trump. And then he came on at 4 o'clock and basically presented a plan that was much worse than the worst version that anybody expected. Again, we'll talk about it. These tariffs are not reciprocal. There's nothing reciprocal about it. They don't have anything to do with the country, the reciprocal country's tariffs. And they only have to do with the trade deficit. And so the market, as a consequence, said, oh my God, this is much, much worse than we expected. And, the next couple of days, the market plummeted. Actually, no. So he made the announcement on Wednesday. Market plummeted on Thursday. And then Friday early morning, just before the market opened, or maybe just before the market opened, China announced that it was reciprocating with 34% tariffs on all American goods. And that caused the market to plunge again. So the market is now plunged over 2 days. It's some of the worst, financial performance we've seen, certainly since COVID, since March of 2020. It is, yeah. Well, you know what I think. I mean, it's just the dumbest, stupidest thing ever done. And this is not controversial. So usually what I say, even about economics, is controversial. My statement about tariffs, there's nothing controversial here. This is pretty much, if you're online, you'll find Larry Summers, who's generally a left of center, was he, Treasury Secretary under Obama or Clinton, or he's a leftist, left of center. Larry Summers thinks this is the dumbest policy ever. Tyler Cowen, kind of a almost libertarian-ish economist, and everybody in between pretty much agrees. Who is educated in economics agrees. This is probably the dumbest economic policy that anybody has ever done, any American president has ever done, and completely unnecessary and just stupid. So there's a lot of information out there. If you go on Twitter, or if you go read the Free Press, if you go, Tyler Cowen has a good article there. Matt Iglesias, left of center, and Cato Institute. I mean, there's so much material out there right now against these tariffs. I'm not going to give you a lot of information here that you can't already get out there by economists of all political shades. This is not about left and right. This is about ignorant and knowledgeable, stupid and smart, care about America, not care about America. All right, so we will. We're gonna talk about this. We're going to talk about the tariffs and how we came up with them, where the numbers come from, and how the imposition of tariffs on various countries and what kind of impact that has. I want to talk about the geopolitics of this. There's a huge geopolitical consequence of this. This is going to have all the opposite effects of what I think Trump would like, or I don't know what Trump would like. Who knows? But this is going to have very detrimental geopolitical impacts on the United States. Again, it might have ultimately positive impacts on the rest of the world if they act in a rational way. Unlikely that the rest of the world acts rationally, but if they did, it could have positive impacts on it because it could wake them up. It has only negative implications for the United States. And my fear, here's another one of my predictions, my real fear. And this is not just me exaggerating or anything like that, but my real fear is that ultimately this day, Liberation Day, will come to be known as a pivot day, as a day in which America, pivoted towards economic decline. Now, you could probably set that date during the financial crisis, maybe even 9/11, lots of dates. But this could be the one key decision that kind of clearly illustrates, okay, now America's in decline. And again, unforced error, unnecessary, completely unnecessary, self-inflicted. So geopolitical consequences, we'll get to that. We're going to talk about economics, geopolitics. Oh yeah, I want to talk about some of the things that people are saying to justify this. And my comments on it. Again, nothing new here. These are the same excuses and reasons people have been giving forever. But what's his name? Miller, one of Trump's major advisors, xenophobic, immigration hating, import hating, Trump advisor is out there spouting, Stephen Miller, spouting just unbelievable, insane nonsense. Now, here's the thing I want you to remember, and we've talked about this before as well. Trump and the people close to Trump are professional liars. That is, they lie. They know they lie. They are constantly lying. They lie so much that it's almost impossible to differentiate between when they lie and when they tell the truth. And while most politicians lie, when most politicians lie, they try to hide the fact that they're lying. They still believe that there is a truth out there, and they don't. There's some way they don't want to be caught. The whole point of Trump's lies is he doesn't care about being caught. The lies are a loyalty test. The lies are a form of trying to, change what people are talking about, change the whole framing of an issue, and therefore get people aligned with the lie. And they've learned it somewhat from the left, that if you lie and lie and lie and lie and lie on the same thing over and over again for a long period of time, people start believing it. And at some point, the lie becomes, well, it's an obvious truth. And nobody even challenges, nobody even thinks of it. And there are a number of economic lies that have been told about the U.S. economy over the last 20 years that, the lie is coming home to roost now, in a sense that Trump is capitalizing on those lies, the decline of the middle class and the decline of wages and the decline of the standard of living and quality of life in America, all lies that particularly the left and MAGA have perpetuated. Now we've got economic policy based on those lies, and we're all going to suffer the consequences of that fact. All right, let me just do something here. Sorry. All right. All right. So we'll talk about Stephen Miller and the kind of lies. We'll talk about that is related to the lies. All right. The other thing I want to make clear is there's no economic strategy here. There's no big plan. There's no remaking of the world trading system by some thoughtful, if a mistaken plan. No. Everything that happened on Wednesday, this whole thing is just Trump. It's one plan. It's one person emoting, acting like a child, imposing his will on his economic advisors. Let's be clear. There's not an economist, with exception of maybe one person. There's not an economist in the White House who believes this tariff plan is a good plan. There's not one person in the entire White House who believes this tariff plan is a good plan. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with good or bad. It has everything to do with satisfying the president's desires. You heard that from J.D. Vance the other day about Greenland, right? Why do we want Greenland? Well, because Trump wants Greenland and we must support everything the president desires. Well, this is the same thing. Trump hates trade imbalances, hates trade deficits, and therefore it's the job of the economists to satisfy the president's desires. Even if that destroys the U.S. economy, it doesn't matter. The president desires that, and therefore we must do it. Here's just one concrete example of this. Trump's team has spent weeks, really since he was elected, months, trying to calculate a true, there's no such thing as true, but true, in this context, there's no such thing as true, reciprocal tariff rate for every country. They got the data out, they looked it up, they studied it, they tried to calculate an actual rate. And they were all ready to present this and to have this go into effect. And again, they work hard on this. It's not easy, and they took into account different tax regimes, and I mean it's all nonsense, it's all BS, but they did the work, they did the math. But the reality is that a few days before Liberation Day, Donald Trump personally selected a formula that was basically based on two variables: the trade deficit with each country and the total value of its U.S. exports, and he divided the two numbers, and that was it. And that's how they calculated all the so-called reciprocal rates. Has nothing to do with the tariffs the other country imposes on the U.S. I'll give you one example. Israel, in the days leading up to the imposition of tariffs, let's back up a little bit. Israel has very, very, very low tariffs with America. Most things, 80% of all imports into Israel from the U.S. are taxed at zero. There was some agricultural products, food basically, that was taxed at a low rate, but there was a tariff on it. So Israel unilaterally said, we're eliminating all tariffs on U.S. goods. We're lowering tariffs to zero, even on the food. And by the way, Israeli farmers are very, very upset because, as you know, tariffs are nothing but a tax to protect special interest groups. And one of the most powerful special interest groups, one of the most powerful pressure groups in Israeli politics, are the farmers. And so the Israel unilaterally lowered tariffs to zero in spite of the objections of the farming lobby. What did Trump do? Did he say, oh, Israel has zero tariffs with the United States, we should have zero tariffs with Israel? Now, there's no such thing as zero tariffs because there's a minimum of 10% tariff on everybody. But even that wasn't enough. It wasn't just a 10%. Because Israel exports to America more than it imports. In other words, the United States has a trade deficit with Israel. It doesn't matter that the tariffs were zero. And Israel got hit with I think a 13% or above 10% tariff rate. Not huge, but 13% is significant on all Israeli goods, which means you'll be paying more for much of your technology because that's the biggest thing that Israel exports to the United States. It's technology. So it has nothing to do, I had one other example, it has nothing to do with the tariff rates that the other country imposes on you, actually, and everything to do, I had this Switzerland example, and I can't find it now. So Switzerland, here's a good example. Switzerland has zero, nada, no tariffs on American goods. So you think, if it was reciprocal, Trump would have no tariffs on them. But instead, the tariff on Switzerland is going to be 31%. 31! Why? Again, because they run a trade deficit. Right? The Swiss were shocked. Shocked. Right? I mean, even Europe, which does have tariffs on American goods, like the EU. Switzerland is not part of the EU. The EU, which does have tariffs on American goods, but has, I guess, a smaller trade deficit and more exports come in from the United States, they only got a 20% tariff. Britain, because it doesn't have a trade deficit with the United States, got a 10% tariff, even though they have tariffs on American goods. So the Swiss get screwed for not having tariffs. So much for what Trump really wants is zero tariffs in the world. No, he doesn't. He wants zero trade deficit for the United States, which is economically ignorant. We've talked about this many times. So expect your Swiss chocolate. I'm going to actually fill my suitcase before I come back to Puerto Rico with Swiss chocolate, the Lindt chocolate, which I like, because it's just gone up in price by 30% in the United States. Medical devices, which we buy from Switzerland, that are imported by the United States into Switzerland, they're going to have a very high import rate. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. And of course, by doing this, we're favoring English chocolate. We're favoring British medical devices over Swiss chocolate and Swiss medical devices, even though arguably Swiss chocolate is better. It's going to be so much more expensive than British chocolate that we might have to compromise for British chocolate because we won't be able to afford Swiss chocolate. But we're benefiting British chocolate not because consumers prefer British chocolate, but because Trump, in his bizarreness, weirdness, stupidity, is putting a lower tariff on British chocolate than he is on Swiss chocolate by a factor of 1 to 3. Tariff on Swiss chocolate is going to be 3 times as high as the one on British chocolate. Who gets screwed by that? Well, you do. Prices might not go up that much, but choice will go away. Choice will go away. I mean, it could very well be that we just don't import chocolate from Switzerland anymore because it's too expensive. The importers won't import it because they'll think nobody will buy it, and we'll just switch to British chocolate. Now, there's a dramatic decline in quality. Have you ever tasted British chocolate? I'm kidding. British chocolate is probably quite good. No, it really isn't. It really probably isn't. All right. So, as I said, the tariffs were not calculated based on reciprocity. So first thing you can do to other people out there saying, it's just reciprocal, they tariff us, so we're tariffing them. No, Switzerland doesn't tariff us, and we are tariffing them. So no, it's nothing like that. This is what you have to remember, and this is the most important thing you have to remember. The increase in tariffs is a tax increase on Americans. Americans will pay it with higher prices and less choice. Higher prices and less choice. And the Americans will start paying it almost immediately. This will hit the economy very fast. It's phasing in this week or this coming week. There will be a variety of different reciprocal tariffs placed on American goods, which will hurt American exports and raise prices all over the world for American goods, but also for domestic goods. As we know, if you raise price for an import, the domestic competitors are free now to raise their prices because they face less competition. We've seen this already with steel. Steel has a 25% tariff. Steel prices in the United States have gone up, I think, more than 25%, because domestic manufacturers say, okay, now we can raise prices because our competition's prices automatically have gone up by 25%. And that means that everybody who uses steel is going to pay much higher prices for steel. And that means that everything that you buy that has steel in it is going to cost a lot more money. For what exactly? Okay. So here's the story the Trump people are telling. Basically, the few historical facts that they, lump up together and make the case about. They say, look, we inherited a depression. I'm not kidding you guys, but Stephen Miller is out there saying that the Trump administration inherited an economic depression from Biden. Now, what did I say before about lies? He knows it's a lie. It doesn't matter. He says it confidently. He looks straight into the camera and he tells you, we inherited a massive economic depression. And people are going, yeah, I didn't like the Biden economy. Yeah, it must have been a depression. He says that the economy was in total freefall when Trump took office. Total freefall. Now, just by the way, actual GDP growth was at 2.3%, not outstanding, but certainly not freefall. Unemployment rate was 4.1%, which is pretty close to full employment in the United States. The inflation rate, while not good, was at 2.9%, not 7 or 8%. It was probably the healthiest economy in the Western world, maybe the healthiest economy in the developed world, because even in Asia, most of the Asian economies, the richer Asian economies, are struggling. He goes on to say, over the last few decades, the middle class has been hollowed out. Now, it's true, the middle class has shrunk. But I've told you this before, and the data is just the data. You can argue with me about ideas, but data is data. The middle class has shrunk because more middle class people have become rich. The number of people in poverty in the United States has gone down. The number of people in the middle class have gone down. And the number of people who are defined by whoever defines these things as rich has gone up. But you see, if you're in the lower middle class and if you're in the upper realms of the poverty, you don't know that and you don't really care about that. You feel stuck. And that's who he's appealing to. But if you're in the upper middle class, if you're in one of those middle class who've now become rich, you should know better. You might think it's just you. I'm doing well, but everybody else is doing terrible. That's also something common that people often articulate. They argue that wages have not gone up. That's just not true. Over the last 15 years, wages have gone up really well. And actually, working class wages have gone up faster than wages of higher income people. So wages have done very well. Unemployment has been very low. GDP growth has been, not great, but it's been increasing. And inflation, while spiking in 2022, has been declining and has stabilized at, again, around 2.9%, which is too high, but not an unmitigated disaster that's being presented. So the first thing these people do, and this is, by the way, a typical fascist tactic, but it's also what the left does. Politicians do this. They present the past in the darkest terms possible, so as to justify you have to do something radical. We have to do something radical. And by the way, if the tariffs lead the economy down, if they make it worse, if we head into a recession, which everybody's expecting, including the administration now, they will blame it on Biden. They will say, and they're saying it now, they're saying it's a necessary cleansing. We need it. We need a recession to cleanse the economy of the muck, and we'll come out of it on the other side much, much stronger. But this is voodoo economics. This is complete nonsense. So, first of all, they have to lie about the state of the economy to justify radical stuff. The second thing people like Stephen Miller say, and I saw a video of him saying this, we provide defense for the Koreans. We provide defense for the Japanese. We provide defense for Europe. He doesn't say this, but implicit in everything is we provide defense for Israel. And So we subsidize the defense of the West. And we've had it. We're not subsidizing it anymore. Now, there's a lot of truth to that. We do subsidize the defense of the Western world, the free world, if you will. The United States spends a lot more on defense spending than Europe does. It spends more than Japan and South Korea, and it deploys troops all over the world in order to defend the free world. And it's completely understandable to say, we've had enough of that. We don't want to do it. Okay, so stop doing it. Stop providing that defense. But instead, what he's saying is, we've been subsidizing it all. We want our money back. So we're going to tariff you. And that's how we're going to get our money back. Because now you, all these other countries, you're going to have to pay this tariff. And that's going to compensate us for all the money we spent on defending you. But Europeans and South Koreans, and Japanese and Chinese and everybody else, well, we're not defending China, but anyway, all these people, they don't pay the tariff. Do I have to say it again? You pay the tariff. Americans pay the tariff. The tariff is a tax increase, by the way, the largest tax increase in America, certainly since the 1960s, depending on how it plays out. But you pay the tariff. So we're basically saying, look, Europeans, we've been subsidizing long enough. We want to stop subsidizing NATO. So we're going to raise taxes on Americans, and we're going to stop buying as many goods from you as we did before. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It's again logically incoherent. If the United States wants to say, we do not want to defend Europe anymore, there's a process, I'm sure, of leaving NATO. If the United States wants to say, we're not going to defend South Korea and Japan anymore, fine. You can close your bases in South Korea and Japan. Now we can talk about the wisdom of doing that, but you can close your bases in South Korea and Japan and stop doing it. But the idea that we should tax ourselves in order to penalize the Europeans, Koreans, and Japanese is insane. But you see, it doesn't matter. They'll just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. It's just like Trump keeps saying, other people pay the tariffs, other countries pay the tariffs, even though, again, nobody actually believes that, including Trump. But he says it over and over and over again, and now people start repeating it. And of course, one of the ways Trump knows you're loyal, one of the ways Trump knows you're one of the good guys, is if you repeat his lies. It's a loyalty test. And by the way, one of the things all this lying does, I mentioned this before, one of the things all this lying does, it's an attack on reason. It's an attack on reality. It's an attack on fact. And they do this on purpose. This is what fascists, authoritarians do. What they want to do is cripple your mind. They want to make it impossible for you to think for yourself. They want to make it impossible for you to be able to differentiate between what is true and what is not. Because then you become epistemologically dependent on them. You become dependent on them for knowledge, for truth, for reality. And this is what the Nazis did, this is what the communists did. They have to divorce your mind from reality, because otherwise you'll oppose what they're doing, because you'll see how stupid it is. And they do that by lying and lying and lying and lying. So, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we did that. I just want to make sure we cover everything. Okay, let me look where we are here. I mean, one of the things. So look, there is no excuse for what is going on. Note that when they're coherent, they give three explanations for why tariffs are good. Three explanations. So people support it. Three explanations. All of them are wrong, and all contradict each other. So, if one is true, then the others cannot be true, and so on. So the first is the tariffs are a way to raise a huge amount of revenue in order to eliminate the income tax. But we've talked about this. To really do that, you would have to raise tariffs to 150%. And as you raise tariffs higher, the number of imports decline, so you have to raise them even higher to get anywhere close. So it's not a massive income generator because people just buy less because prices go up, so they buy less of the imported goods. What are we going to do about cars, right? So here you have a 25% tariff on cars. Japanese cars, German cars, Korean cars. So what are Americans going to do? Now, American car companies are going to raise their prices. So what are Americans going to do? I mean, if you like BMWs, but you're not going to pay 25% extra for BMW, what are you going to do? Well, you're not going to buy a new car. You're going to buy a used car. A used car doesn't generate any revenue for the government. So you would have bought a Japanese car or a German car, but instead you're just going to buy it used. You can expect used car prices to go up quite a bit. And you can expect the number of people buying new cars to decline. So the amount of revenue that the tax on the cars is going to generate is going to be disappointing because the amount of imports is going to be lower. So it can't really replace income tax or any other tax as a revenue source. It's going to bring manufacturing back to America. Well, of course, to the extent that it brings manufacturing back to America, then we'll buy only American stuff, and then it won't generate any revenues at all because we'll just buy American stuff. So the more the goal of bringing manufacturing stuff back to America is achieved, the less revenue we're going to get. So again, it just doesn't make any sense on a revenue perspective. Now, it is true that in the 19th century, the American government funded itself on tariffs alone. But the federal government of the United States in the 19th century never spent more than 3.5% of GDP. It was tiny. It was a tiny little government. Yes, you could probably fund 3.5% of GDP on tariffs alone. And if we're willing to shrink the government to 3.5% of GDP, that would be amazing. I'd be all for that. But that's not happening. Nobody has a proposal like that. The government spends today 22% of GDP. What is that? Between 6 to 7 times as much. Where are you going to get all that revenue? You can't get it from tariffs. It's just impossible. Now, what about bringing manufacturing home? Is that going to happen? Well, no. It's not efficient to bring manufacturing home. Americans are not going to go back into the textile industry. They're not. Nike is not going to make shoes in America. It'll just, prices of shoes will go up. We'll still import them from outside. And Americans will pay more for shoes. They'll buy fewer shoes. They'll replace shoes less often. In that sense, quality of life, standard of living will go down. But nobody's going to build a shoe manufacturing plant in America. First of all, what if Trump or whoever replaces Trump decides tomorrow arbitrarily to lower tariffs? Then they can't compete again with foreign shoes. Who's going to take that risk? Who's going to make that kind of investment? And you just can't generate enough profit margins to justify building a shoe factory in the United States. Now, what about labor? Labor is going to be expensive. How are you going to pay them? How are you going to generate a profit if you pay labor, what you pay in the United States for labor and the benefits and everything else, health insurance and everything else that companies pay what is actually done? How is that possible? So manufacturing is not coming back to the United States. What's going to happen? And by the way, who is going to work in these factories? Most people in the United States who want to work, overwhelming majority of people in the United States who want to work. They've got jobs. Why would they leave their jobs that they have today and go and work in a shoe manufacturing job, or in a widget manufacturing job, or an auto parts manufacturing job? Why would they do that? One of the reasons those jobs don't exist anymore is because they were not great jobs. It's a myth that manufacturing jobs are superior. They're the good jobs. Service jobs are bad. Manufacturing jobs are good. It's just nonsense. Most service jobs are like programming is a service job. Designing microprocessors is a service job. What NVIDIA does, what Apple does, what Google does, what Amazon does, what Microsoft does. Service. We're going to replace those jobs and those people are going to shift to making shoes? It ain't happening, people. And it shouldn't happen. It's, again, economic Middle Ageism, going back to the Middle Ages. So manufacturing jobs now are not coming back to the United States. And as we said over and over and over again over the years, the United States is the second largest manufacturer in the world. It is a larger manufacturer than number 3, 4, 5, and 6 combined in the world. It is a massive manufacturing powerhouse. And we manufacture today more stuff than we've ever manufactured ever in American history. And we do so with a quarter of the people. Why? How do we do that? Because we've increased productivity. And we've increased productivity by using technology, robots, machines, computers. So manufacturing is not coming. It's not coming back. What else? What else is going to help? We can raise revenue. Manufacturing jobs are not coming back. Well, I mean, there's the story, of course, that we'll cut the trade deficit. And trade deficits are bad because trade deficits are the way we subsidize other countries. But if trade deficits come down, then you won't generate any revenue because imports will come down and you're not generating any revenue if that happens. And why is trade deficit bad? And by the way, one of the ways in which you would build factories in the United States if people invested in the United States. But if you're reducing the trade deficit, people would have less dollars to actually invest in the U.S. But there's no value in reducing the trade deficit. Now, there are deficits that are important. Government deficits, spending deficits, very important. They need to shrink. They need to come down. They need to come down dramatically. But that has nothing to do with trade. Trade deficits don't matter. I'll say this again. I've said this a million times, but I have to say it again. I have a massive trade deficit with my grocery store. I go and I buy groceries. I leave the money. I take the goods. And they never have hired me to come and give a speech. They've never paid me. They don't sponsor the Yaron Brook show here. That's a trade deficit. It's a pretty big one. So, there's nothing wrong with trade deficits. There's a lot wrong with budget deficits. There's a lot wrong with printing money. There's a lot wrong with a lot of things the U.S. government does. Trade deficits, just a phenomena, just a consequence of all these other things. It's not neither good nor bad. It does represent the fact that foreigners want American dollars. They want to sell us because they like dollars. One of the reasons, it is interesting, I've told you in the past that tariffs generally cause the dollar to rise. Because what happens, right? People still want dollars. They can't get them by selling stuff to Americans because Americans won't buy because of the tariffs. So they have to go into the market and buy the dollars, and that raises the value of the dollar. And that also allows Americans to buy more stuff. Right now, the dollar is plummeting. So you might say, Yaron, you were wrong. You were wrong. You guys love to say I'm wrong, right? Tariffs are going up, and the dollar is going down. How is that? Here's the basic reason, and this is a scary reason, and this is a reason to be very pessimistic about the U.S. economy. The reason the dollar is going down is because foreigners don't want dollars. They don't want to invest in the U.S. They don't trust the United States. They maybe now don't like the United States, although I don't know how much that plays a factor in investments. But we know they don't trust. They don't trust Trump. They don't trust economic policies. They don't know where interest rates are heading. They don't know if we're heading towards a recession or not. They think we are. If we're heading towards a recession, they don't want to be investing in America. They don't want to buy American stocks. They don't want to buy American factories. They don't want to buy American land if we're heading towards a recession. And plus, Trump has made it clear he doesn't want foreign companies buying American companies. So they don't want dollars. Interest rates are going down as tariffs go up. So the 10-year interest rate is plummeting. The 10-year interest rate is plummeting because the market's expecting a recession, and therefore they're expecting the Fed to reduce interest rates and demand for loans to decline, because if we're heading to a recession, who wants to borrow money? And why do businesses borrow money? To expand. They borrow money to invest in new factories and new manufacturing and new plants and new stuff, right? Why would you do that if you're heading towards a recession and if uncertainty is through the roof and you don't know what the hell Washington, D.C. is doing? So the real scary part is people right now don't want dollars. They don't want dollars because the interest they're going to get is going to be low, they think, because of the recession. And they don't want dollars because they don't want to invest in the U.S. That should scare you. That should scare you. And again, another reason why manufacturing is not coming back to the U.S. All right. See, here's the way Scott Lincecum summed up the activities on Liberation Day. We shouldn't call it that. It's impose. So number one, impose hundreds of billions of dollars in new taxes on Americans without public or congressional input. You could argue unconstitutional. Two, the tariffs are based on secret calculations that have little, if any, connection to actual foreign trade barriers. Yep, showed you that with the Switzerland example. Three, ignore all U.S. tariff, non-tariff barriers, which in some cases are quite high. U.S. has, in some cases, some of the highest tariffs in the world, and a lot of unbelievable non-tariff trade barriers. Four, all of this justified by a national emergency that reflects a total misunderstanding of how trade deficits work. 5, disregard U.S. trade agreement commitments, including one made by Trump himself, the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. 6, all this will make us poorer and likely do real and lasting harm to the U.S. economy, including, by the way, manufacturing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we manufactured less, not more, after these tariffs. And 7, embolden our adversaries around the world. Notice this, that Trump placed a tariff on Switzerland, a tariff on Canada and Mexico, a tariff on the EU, a tariff on Israel. No tariff on Russia. No tariffs on Russia. We don't import anything from Russia, so I guess. So, but we might in the future, like on uranium or oil or stuff, but no tariffs on Russia. So, tariffs on, so Russia's emboldened. But notice this too. This was really interesting. Trump placed high tariffs on South Korea and Japan. Why? Because we imported a lot of stuff from them. On Vietnam, we imported a lot of stuff from Vietnam. Now, the Koreans, the Japanese, and the Vietnamese are not happy about this. And indeed, the Koreans and the Japanese have met with the Chinese and have decided with the Chinese to coordinate their reciprocal tariffs towards the United States. So the fact that we are basically engaging in a trade, I hate to call it a war because I hate wars on inanimate objects like trade, or on conceptual ideas like trade. So we're upsetting our allies. And basically by upsetting our allies, we're driving them into the hands of our enemies. The biggest beneficiary of what we've just done, of these tariffs, is China. Now China's exports to the United States will decline because prices will go up. Trade from the United States to China will decline because they have just imposed 34% tariffs on US goods. So a lot of our farmers, our manufacturers, like Caterpillar, will suffer because they will no longer be selling into the Chinese market. But China's rationale is, okay, we'll sell to South America. We'll sell to the rest of Asia. We'll team up with Vietnam and Korea and Japan, and we'll sell to each other. We'll sell to the EU. So yes, from now on, we have to take into account that America, the largest single economy in the world, 6% of GDP, global GDP. Okay, they're out. They're still 75% of GDP. And indeed, if the rest of the world was smart, I mean, this would be so much fun to watch if it happened. I would be so happy if this happened. It won't happen, so don't worry. You're not going to get me to be happy on that ground. But this would be so cool if it happened. I'd be so excited if this happened. You'd see me jumping up and down here. Imagine if the rest of the world said, okay, United States, bye. And they all signed free trade agreements between each other. Imagine if they all just lowered tariffs from everybody except the United States. Like, screw America. I mean, that would both be justice and beautiful, and the rest of the world would get rich as America would decline. Because trade makes you rich. Trade makes you rich. I'm reading a book now about the history of trade because I'm doing a course for the Peterson Academy on trade. So I'm reading this book on global trade and the history of it. And look, it's unequivocal. Trade makes you rich. There are only two things that economics really is about. Production. You need something you have to produce for your own needs. But then excess production, you use that to trade. Oops, what is happening? Why is my camera not charging? Let's see if it'll charge now. Yeah, I think it's charging now. Okay. So trade makes you rich, and the rest of the world would become rich. Would become rich if it just traded freely among each other without the United States. That would be an amazing outcome for this. Now, awful for the United States, but how do you say it? You asked for it, brother. You asked for it. You voted Trump in, so suffer the consequences. That's what the rest of the world should do. That's what the rest of the world should do. So yes, geopolitically, this is emboldening our enemies and driving many of our allies towards what the Trump administration says is their number one enemy, China. It's driving the rest of Asia towards China. The rest of Asia is going, really? You're placing 30, 40, 50% tariffs on, let's say, Vietnam? Why? Vietnam's just going to go and say, yeah, we'll just orient towards the rest of the world. We'll team up with China to try to screw you. It's just, yeah. If the foreign policy of this administration was supposed to be, we are going to be focused on a Chinese threat, then you would want to minimize the tariffs on the Asian countries and make them your friends in an alliance against China. But you've just massively alienated them. How does that make any sense? I mean, anyway, I see this a lot. If tariffs don't work, why do other countries use them? Other countries use them because they are a way to protect particular industries. They are net losses for the economy as a whole, for individuals as a whole, but particular industries. They concentrate the benefits for pressure groups, for special interest groups, for cronies, at the expense of the rest of the productive people in society. Countries are willing to do that trade-offs all the time because the particular industries that benefit, they will lobby. The rest of us who suffer, we don't lobby. We don't know what's going on. The steel industry is very concentrated in their ability to lobby. The rest of us who suffer from the steel tariffs, what are we going to do? So other countries do this because they've been captured. They have cronies. They have cronyism. And the more cronyism you have, the more tariffs you will have. Now, it's also true that other countries have much worse economic policies than the United States. It's one of the reasons the United States, particularly over the last 15 years, has actually done much, 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 much better than Europe and much of the developed world. So what the United States is now saying to itself is, we did so well. Maybe we should match the stupid policies of other countries so we don't do so much better than everybody else. It's not right that we should be that much better than everybody else. We need equality. Why would you want to do the stupid things, the economically dumb things that other countries do? So here's the bottom line. I mean, there are lots of bottom lines, but the Republican Party, traditionally, historically, has always been better, a little bit better at least, but better than the left on economics. But as this party becomes a personality cult, a low intelligence, as it becomes really the stupid party of low intelligence and personality worship, it is adopting all the worst elements of leftist economics. The benefits of free trade are unequivocal, but they're kind of counterintuitive. And you have to have a certain understanding, you have to have a willingness to think it through. You have to have a certain level of intelligence, but you also have to be guided by intelligent intellectuals, which the right used to have. I don't know why this is not functioning. All right. The picture's just gone. I'll be right back. Wait. One second. I think I know what's going on. I think this will work. We'll see in a minute, but video is now back, so I think this will work. Anyway, you've got a political party now. You need to think to figure out the win-win nature of trade. As I've said in the past, win-win nature of trade is a conceptual understanding of that is a conceptual achievement. At the perceptual level, at the level of what you see with your senses, trade looks like zero sum and can seem like negative sum. And certainly Trump, who I don't think is very smart, believes trade is a negative sum game. They're winners and losers. Whereas I think every intelligent economist in the world, this is not something I'm radical about, believe that trade is win-win. The trade is something both parties benefit from. So you've got a political party now that is led by somebody who is completely ignorant of economics and does not have the intellect to be able to understand it, and therefore repeats his stupidity over and over and over again. And because this is the man that the party worships and blindly follows, they are just willing to nod and say yes and then repeat the stupidities regarding the nature of trade and the nature of international trade, the nature of personal trade. And so now we have two political parties, a left and a right, particularly at their extremes, both dedicated to economic statism, to economic ignorance, to economic decay, ultimately to the decline and decay of America and potentially the rest of the free world. The actual effects on the United States is going to be to stop or dramatically slow down an economic, just an amazing economic phenomenon. The United States, in spite of all the controls, the regulations, the statism, has been doing certainly relatively in comparison to other countries, well. So, what this is going to do is it's going to slow down the U.S. economy, maybe drive it into recession, could even do harm that is not going to be easily reversible. And at the same time, these policies are going to discredit, call it right-wing economics, the anti-woke movement. And what will that do? Well, when people get fed up with Trump and MAGA and all this, and they associate that with free markets and economic liberalism, then they're going to vote in a left-wing populist. And he's just going to double up on all these really, really bad economic policies of Trump and make it a lot worse. And this phenomena of the left and right trying to compete on who does more harm to the U.S. economy, that could very well end the American dominance of the last 150 years. And guess who replaces America? It ain't looking good, people. It is not looking good. And I have to say, I told you so. I warned you. Nobody listens. Nobody listens. All right. What did I want to say? You're already seeing. Trump claimed that Vietnam is coming to the trading table and Vietnam is willing to lower tariffs on American goods to zero. But that doesn't matter. We are always going to have a trade deficit with Vietnam. Vietnam cannot afford to purchase enough American stuff because our stuff is expensive. You need to be a rich country to buy American stuff. Vietnam's never going to be able to afford it. So we'll always have a trade deficit with Vietnam. As long as we have a trade deficit with Vietnam, Trump will want to have tariffs on Vietnam. It's not about the tariffs the Vietnamese put on American goods. It's about the fact that there's a trade deficit. But a trade deficit is a beautiful thing because we get cheap stuff, which leaves us free. leaves more money in our pockets to spend on other stuff. And cheap stuff is not inferior stuff. It's just cheaper. Because the manufacturing processes that are used in the United States are used in many of these other countries. The technology that's used in the US is often used in these other countries. So it doesn't mean it's garbage, it just means it's cheap. So think about how much less we pay for clothes in the US. And that leaves money available for us to save, to invest, to buy other stuff, to go to nice restaurants, to do other things. If you get rid of all that cheap stuff, our cost of living will go up. Our quality of life will go down. Our standard of living will go down. And if you bring all the manufacturing back to America, our standard of living will go down. And by the way, you'll have to open up the borders because you'll have to bring in lots and lots and lots and lots of immigrants in order to fill those factory jobs. Because Americans, they're busy. They're not doing it. So, those of you who voted for Trump, you should be regretting it around now. Really regretting it. If you didn't regret it after what he did to Zelensky, if you didn't regret it just because with the insanity, if you didn't regret it when he shipped off to a prison in El Salvador, people who are not gang members, if you're not regretting it by him rounding people up in the streets, if you're not regretting, his attitude towards Russia and Saudi Arabia, then maybe this should cause you to regret ever voting for this clown. Clown is too nice of a word. One final word. Trump is a nihilist. It's a slightly different form of nihilism than you see from the left, from the far left. But he's a nihilist. So everybody said, the stock market went down like 15%. Everybody said, oh, he'll change his mind. I don't think so this time. I think this time he is happy to watch it burn. I think this time he is relishing the destruction. I think this time his attitude is, they didn't vote for me in 2020. They ticked me off. They pissed me off. I'll show them. I don't think it worries him that the stock market's going down. I think he's embracing it. I don't think it's going to worry him when the U.S. economy goes into recession. I think he's going to embrace it. I don't think it worries him that potentially millions of people will be unemployed. I think he loves it. It's his revenge. Revenge for what? It doesn't matter. In his mind, massive injustices have been committed against him. And look, if he could, he would like to round up all his enemies and throw them into El Salvadorian jail. If he could, he would love to suspend the Constitution tomorrow. He is an authoritarian in every fiber of his body. That's what he wants. And indeed, maybe an economic emergency will give him the power to do more, to become more authoritarian, to suspend more rights. But he is even more of an explicit, he is willing to be even more of an explicit fascist than even I thought he would be. So, he is taking steps to being what I always thought he would be, the worst president in American history. He is moving in that direction, and suddenly his disregard and disrespect for the Constitution and everything else has already put him in that category of the worst. All right. That's what I wanted to say today. I'm sure there's a lot more I have to say about so-called Liberation Day. There's a lot I have to say about Trump and tariffs. But we'll leave it to another day. We already got an hour and 15 minutes. It's 11:15. You guys are asking a lot of questions, which I'm really happy about. I'm not sad about it at all. Of course, Super Chat is on, and we have raised. We're doing well. We're doing good. $250 an hour is the raise that we try to get to, right? We've gone over an hour. We're 355. We've got another 150 to go for the hour. So please consider supporting the show. There's a lot of people watching right now. 200 people are watching right now, live, and that's great. But a lot of you live might not be subscribers, so please subscribe. A lot of you live might not used to liking the show. Press the like button. It really helps the algorithm. So just go on your phone or on your computer, wherever you're watching, and just press the like button. And of course, if you'd like to support the show, if you'd like to help make this possible, it's a viewer-supported show. The show is made possible by viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution right here on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, I know there are a lot of people. There's another, 500 people watching this live right now on Twitter. What happened? Did we just get disconnected? No, we're there. 500 people watching on Twitter. Almost nobody on Facebook for some reason, but Twitter is on live. So if you guys come on and you just do a $1 sticker or a $5 sticker, it adds up really quickly. When we're talking about those of you on Twitter, come over to YouTube and make a contribution. But if you don't want to come on YouTube and you don't want to use the Super Chat, then go to Patreon, www.patreon.com, and just search Yaron Brook Show and make a contribution. Anything from $1 a month to $1,000 a month. Everything adds up, everything helps, everything's appreciated, value for value. Trade, remember, win-win? You're winning because you're listening to the show. You must get some value out of it. Well, make me a winner too by supporting the show. And that way, you become a trader. All right. Chandler says, no, don't ask them for money. Of course I asked them for money. What do you mean? All right. Go to Patreon. Become supporters of the show Patreon. I love Patreon. Is amazing because it's a great way to support the show. All right. Let's jump in to the Super Chat. And again, I'm still looking for $140 to make our numbers for the second hour. And I'm looking for stickers. I'm not seeing stickers. Stickers, $1, $2, $5. There's 700 plus people watching live right now, 1,000 people watching live right now. If just a few of you did some stickers, we would be amazing. We would achieve our goals. All right, let's see. There we go. Quint, thank you. Volta, thank you. All stickers. This is great. Thank you, guys. Who else did a sticker? Let me just see. Let me thank everybody, and then we get to the actual. Mary Aline, thank you for the sticker. And who else? Did we get everybody? John, thank you, John. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Capitalist Spy. Thank you, Capitalist Spy. All right, let's run through this. Michael says Stephen Moore, who is working in the Trump administration. He's not. He worked in the first Trump administration. He's not working in the current Trump administration. He said, quote, while the tariffs are awful, the aggressive deregulation and tax cuts coming down the pipe are far more beneficial than the harm imposed by these tariffs. And Michael asked, could this be the case? Now, it's true that the deregulation is very important and could be incredibly beneficial. The tax cuts are very minor. You'll hear about $4 trillion in tax cuts, but the reality is that the tax cuts are primarily, that they're talking about, that Congress is passing right now, are primarily just an extension of the tax cuts that existed before. This is typical political speak. So these are the tax cuts that Trump passed in 2018. They expire next year. all they're doing is extending them for another 10 years. And they're calling it a cut relative to if they didn't extend them. But the reality is, you're not going to actually have more money in your pocket. You'll just have more money than if they let them expire. There's some tax cuts on tips, on maybe Social Security payments, which is great. It might encourage me to actually start taking Social Security, which I was delaying until 70. But if I get a tax cut now on it, if I don't pay taxes on it, might as well start taking it now, because there's a good chance that the next administration would reverse that. Yeah, so just consideration in terms of when I take my Social Security. But tips, maybe overtime, maybe a few other things. So there's some tax cuts, but these are minor. They're not cutting corporate taxes even more than they did before. They're just keeping it at the level. And so they're not cutting capital gains taxes more. So none of the tax cuts that they're talking about are taxes that are actually going to have an impact, a significant impact on the economy. So tax cuts are insignificant. The deregulation is big if it happens. If it happens. Now, it's yet to happen. Now, again, I've told you I'm very confident it'll happen in energy, on environmentalism, on land use. I don't know where else it's happening. The stuff they're doing on healthcare is a disaster. The suspension of grants to researchers at universities and at the NIH is a disaster from an economic growth perspective. But, well, I mean, it's not a disaster in the sense that this money should be spent by the private sector, but it's going to take time before the private sector picks up on it, and they're not cutting taxes enough to encourage the private sector to do it. They're not cutting spending significantly. So I think Stephen Moore, and I like Stephen Moore. We're very friendly, have been very friendly in the past, but Stephen Moore is just deluding himself, as he deluded himself when he was part of the first Trump administration and didn't get very much done. The reality is that in the first Trump administration, it did a lot of deregulation, and yet the economy never grew faster than 2.8%, something like that. That's not fast. Fast is 4 or 5. So I just, now this time they're going to deregulate more. That's all good. Are they going to deregulate enough? Are they going to deregulate, to such an extent that, it will really make a difference for the economy relative to the stagnation caused by the tariffs? By the way, the tariffs offset a lot of the tax cuts. So, and the tax cuts, again, this is just an extension of the old tax cuts. They're not reducing the top marginal income tax rate. They're keeping it the same. Now, it would have increased if they hadn't kept it the same. So it's just wishful thinking. Now, I'm very hopeful about deregulation. And if deregulation happens on a massive scale and it happens properly, it'll have a very positive economic effect. But here's the thing. You could have done the deregulation, the so-called tax cuts, and not put on tariffs. And then the economy would have shot up. So even if Stephen Moore is right, why, I'm trying to think of a metaphor for this, but it's not coming. Why would you inflict all this damage on yourself and then say, oh yeah, but good stuff is coming? Well, the good stuff would come in spades if you didn't inflict the damage on yourself. These people are so afraid of calling Trump the economic ignoramus that he really is. They're so afraid of it. I mean, I'm the only one who's said he's got the economic understanding of a 5-year-old, and I've said it for years. And people unsubscribe to my channel as a consequence. I don't get massive subscriptions because I'm right about Trump. I get people leaving because I'm right about Trump. That is the state of the world. Michael asks, why are so many people blinded by hatred? Because if you are if you abandon reason, if you abandon the human mind, if you believe that the human mind is impotent, impotent to know reality, impotent to know the truth, impotent to guide your life, that leads you in a state of fear, leaves you at the perceptual level, leaves you in a world that's unintelligible to you, that you cannot understand. And when you don't understand something, you fear it. And that fear of everything around the corner causes you ultimately to look at other people with hatred, because they're a threat to you and you don't understand them. And they might do something bad to you and you don't understand them. And the fear and the ignorance, if you will, the irrationality will always lead to hatred. Always lead to hatred. I mean, just take one form of hatred, anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is one form of, if you will, collective hatred, hatred for a group of people. Why do people hate? Well, I mean, they're basically people who hate Jews, anti-Semites, are people who have given up on thinking, whether they're on the right or on the left. The mystics of one form or another, whether Christian fanatics or, postmodern emotionalists who have elevated emotions to the level of God or to the level of mysticism. And they are people who are afraid. They can't understand the world. They don't know what's happening. They need an explanation. They're desperate for an explanation. And kind of the simplest and dumbest, but the simplest explanation is the Jews did it. The other did it. That other group did it. And if they did it, then we should hate them. So people want to understand the world. They want explanations. And when they can't understand it, because they've given up on reason, then they come up with emotion-based explanations, which are conspiracy theories. And conspiracy theories lead always to hatred. The hatred of whoever is imposing this conspiracy on me. But at the end of the day, fear leads to hate. Irrational fear leads to hate. Jason, America must stop the free ketchup, drink refills, extra ranch, no charge, and free takeaway boxes, culinary, because Europe does not offer it. So Europe doesn't offer it to its people. So it's only fair that we not offer it to our people. Yeah, America, what's all this freebie stuff that you give away when the Europeans don't do it? It's not right. Yeah, because other people haven't gotten it yet, or are stupid, or bad economists, or choose to be poor, we should choose the same thing. I mean, Europe has really, really, really lagged America over the last 20 years economically. It's really big. So we should emulate Europe so we can lag ourselves. It makes no sense. Jackson Ford, thank you, $50, really appreciate it. Hi, Yaron. I just got done reading The Intellectual Bankruptcy of Our Age and writing out my thoughts. Would Rand make a connection between American conservatism and Trump and the German idealist Hegel? Does Peikoff in ominous parallels? Yeah, I mean, Peikoff does make a connection between the modern American intellectuals and Hegel. Would you do that with conservatism and Trump? I mean, let's take Trump for a second. Now, Trump stands for nothing. Trump is not an ideologue. Trump doesn't have a philosophy. Trump is a mobster. He's a gangster. He's a mobster mentality. He's a thug. He doesn't stand, he's not influenced directly by Kant or Hegel or any of these guys. So what makes a Trump possible is these philosophies. What the philosophy of Hegel and others have done, and we'll talk about the relation with American conservatism, is they've basically made American distrust their capacity to reason, to think, to use their mind, because Hegel and Kant and so on have basically argued against reason. And Americans today have abandoned reason. And as we said before, if they abandon reason, you have to replace it with something, and you replace it with emotion, with faith, with cult worship, with personality worship, with Trump worship. So I think that's at best connection. In terms of the German idealism and American conservatism, yeah, I mean, I think there is a link. I think the link is, if you look today at the modern conservative movement, if you look at Christian conservatism, if you look at national conservatism has direct link to German idealism. Now, it's not an ominous parallel, because in the ominous parallel you didn't have national conservatism yet. But if I remember right, Peikoff writes quite a bit on Hegel and his relationship to modern America, or certainly his relationship to the Nazis. And Hegel is the inspiration behind much of the nationalist movements, much of the national movements. And he is the inspiration behind much of national conservatism. And look, national conservatism, part of its agenda is the rejection of reason, and the rejection, even more importantly, but relatedly, of the individual. And that's the modern conservative movement. The modern conservative movement is anti-individual. It's anti-individualism. This is why J.D. Vance, the vice president, insisted America is not an idea. It's certainly not the idea of individualism. It's a place, it's a people. Very Hegelian of him. Very Hegelian of him. So I think the relationship there, I think by reading Ominous Parallels, you will be able to see the relationship, because of how Leonard describes Hegel and his relationship to the German conservatives and ultimately to the American intellectuals. You'll be able to see the relationship with modern conservatism. Andrew, the socialistic aspect of the mixed economy facilitate lying by the government to the public? Does the socialistic aspect of the mixed economy facilitate lying to the public? Or in the positive, how does capitalism facilitate honesty by the government to the public? I mean, part of the issue there is that under capitalism, lying is penalized in the marketplace. And politicians have no incentive to lie. Under capitalism, their economic policies are negligible or non-existent. Or if we're moving towards capitalism, they make sense. There's no reason to lie. In a mixed economy, government policy is often detrimental. It's often hurtful to some for the benefit of others. It's a sacrifice of some to others. And therefore, lying is necessary, because the people who are being sacrificed, the sacrificial animals, they are not going willingly to the altar. They have to be lied to in order to get their sacrifice, in order for them to accept the sacrifice, in order for them to support the sacrifice. So, capitalism, if you lie, you lose business. Politicians have no reason to lie. Capitalism makes pretty much everybody better off. Everybody's willing to work. Everybody is willing to engage in the system, is better off. So there's no reason to lie. Mixed economy requires constant lying, because it requires constant sacrificing of some to others, constantly, in the name of socialism. Now, and you know, it's okay to lie for the greater good. It's okay to lie for the sacrifice of some to others, because sacrifice is noble. Nobody wants to do it, but it's noble, so it's okay if you force them to do it. Barbara, good to see your show you're on. I have been spending way too much time watching news shows. You do a great job condensing and analyzing. And thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. And we'll be back to a more regular schedule starting middle of next week. On the Leroy, you told us, watch the Yaron Brook show so you don't have to watch the news. But then you abandoned us for almost a week. Glad you're back to give us the rational thought and hopefully optimism we desperately need. I don't know about optimism. It's tough right now to be optimistic about anything regarding politics. The only optimistic spin I can give you is that what Trump is doing, both in terms of his foreign policy vis-a-vis Russia, Ukraine, and in terms of these tariffs, is he's maybe slapping the world awake. So it's absolutely true that, in a sense, Europe has been cruising off of America. America does subsidize their defense. America has facilitated, innovation, and as a consequence, the Europeans have benefited from American innovation without there being much innovation happening in Europe itself. So yeah, there's a sense in which they're free riding off of us. Maybe, this is my best optimistic, line. Maybe what happens is the Europeans wake up and they say, look, we can't rely on America anymore. America's an unreliable partner. We better engage in the economic and foreign policy and military policies that serve our interests. And they know what that is, right? They've just had a commission that explained to them that economic growth depends on deregulation and entrepreneurship and innovation, and they should do that. So maybe, just maybe, they'll deregulate, they'll encourage innovation, they'll change, they'll start investing in defense, they'll start standing up to Russia themselves, they'll start doing the things that are necessary in order to be independent of the US. And that would be amazing. And maybe the rest of the world will follow. Maybe Asia will become freer because they'll look at America and they say, that's a basket case. We don't want to follow them. That's the most hopeful I can be. Maybe, at the end of the day, Milei will win and Trump will lose. That is, the ideas of Milei win out and the ideas of Trump lose out. Because we're seeing the experiment. Argentina going up, the United States going down. And maybe people will get what the trade-off really is there. We'll see. Thank you, on the Leroy, and I'm sorry I put you through the agony of a week without Yaron Brook show. I know it's hard for you guys. Christian, Germany attacks Hungary for leaving the ICC. Same time, EU takes new Syrian foreign minister from terrorist, takes them off the terror list, to allow him to enter the EU. Sweet hypocrisy. I don't like Orban, but I celebrate him for this. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, every country should leave the ICC. The ICC is a horrible organization with no power to enforce its rulings anyway. So it's illegitimate and it's not ruled by a constitution. There's no governing body of law that it follows. Maybe the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which is a very, 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 at best, mixed document, not a very good document. So it's just not a legitimate organization. So I'm all happy to see Orban leave, but Orban generally is a bad guy, so I never celebrate bad guys. So he's bad. Germany drops the thing about the Syrian foreign minister. Of course, it's the same thing. But hypocrisy is everywhere, right? Hypocrisy is no big deal. It's everywhere. Everybody does it all the time. But here's the thing. It's unbelievable to me that, as I just said, maybe Europe will wake up. Well, if Europe's waking up, why is it inviting the new Syrian foreign minister in? Why does it want to talk to the Syrian foreign minister? Unless they want to deport all the Syrians back to Syria. Maybe that's what the Germans want. Maybe that's the goal. Wouldn't be a bad idea. Keep the productive ones. Keep the non-Islamist ones. Keep the ones that have actually integrated into German society, and get rid of the rest. Send them back to Syria. All right. We are good. Thank you guys. We're doing well. Let's see, Liam. Why can't Americans recognize that there is an alternative to the left that isn't fascist? Well, maybe they do recognize it, but it's not being offered to them. That is, there is no alternative to the left being offered on the ballot that's not, in some ways fascist. If there was, I don't know how they would rule. Now, it's true that Trump won a Republican primary, so you could ask, why do Republicans not recognize? And I think there it's personality worship, it's fear and hatred. They want to be fascist. There's a certain percentage of the Republican Party, significant percentage of the Republican Party, who wants fascism. They're willing to suspend the rule of law, suspend the Constitution, to get the left. So, and by the way, how do you recognize anything if you've given up on reason, which so many of these people have? Just look at how they reason, in quotation mark, about tariffs. And you can see that they've basically given up on logic, they've given up on reason. You can argue with them until you're blue in the face, you can give them facts, evidence, charts, whatever. You will not move them one iota. Because they are committed, because their leader has told them, because they won't let reality interfere with what their leader has said. That's fascism. That's readiness for fascism, which is what they are. They're ready for fascism. Ryan, it is hilarious that a large number of people think that tariffs are part of a master economic plan. Insanity that defies reason. Yes, I mean, people still believe that Trump is so smart that this is part of a 5D plan. But no, there is no plan here. There's certainly no 3D plan. This is just economic ignorance. This is economic stupidity. This is just economic arrogance. Arrogance in a very negative word, sense. This is just the Trump administration just fulfilling the whim, the emotion of Trump. Nothing, there's no more than that. There's no more than one man who knows nothing dictating the policy of a nation of 350 million people. And knows not nothing, he knows what he thinks he knows stuff. That's what makes him dangerous. He thinks he knows things that are just untrue. Doodle Bunny. In a free society, if I see someone stealing my car from my driveway, should I be allowed to shoot him? Or should I have to call the police to outsource my violence? I think if your life is not threatened, then you shouldn't just shoot him. Certainly not shoot to kill him. If you feel your life is threatened, then yes. Then it's an emergency and you need to shoot him. I'm skeptical about shooting people who might be stealing your car. What if there's some confusion and your wife lent the neighbor the car keys and he's driving the car away and you shoot him? It's just if there's any ambiguity, if there's even a tiny bit of ambiguity about this, you're banning objectivity. You're banning the ability to be objective, and you could be engaged in something very tragic. So. And is, if you will, the proportionate response to stealing a car death? Is that the sentence he should get? So I'm all for if somebody is in your home, somebody's inside your home, I say shoot him, because there's a real threat. You don't know what his intentions are, But if somebody pickpockets you and is running away with a wallet, you take aim and you shoot them in the back of the head, and that's okay? I don't think so. Good to ask a legal scholar, but I don't think so. James Taylor, what types of energy deregulations have we seen so far from Trump? Not much, because these things take process. So what we've seen is the Energy Department putting up a whole list of items relating to energy up for what they call public comment. And then we will see soon that once that period is over, they will eliminate or they will stop enforcing certain regulations. That will mean it will be much easier to drill. It'll be much easier to export LNG, liquefied natural gas, much easier to transport LNG, much easier to build pipelines, build refineries, things like that. I mean, maybe not build refineries much easier because that's mostly local barriers. But the things that and then there's a massive slew of environmental regulations, and that's where the real issue is, that they are taking comments on now, and if they repeal, that will have a massive impact on the U.S. economy. All the environmental stuff that delays projects, that makes it impossible to build in the United States, all of that could potentially go away. That's something Trump didn't do in his first administration. This would be huge if it was done, and could indeed stimulate the economy to such an extent that we'd feel the evil of the tariffs a lot less. So we could have had an economy, going like this, going like that, and instead we might have an economy go like this. It won't go down, it might go up a little bit, but we're giving up on that because of the tariffs. Does Israel run a big welfare state like Western Europe? Yeah, Israel's a fairly big welfare state. There's a lot of redistribution of wealth in Israel. And taxes are high as a consequence. Dan, imagine noise from reps if Biden had done tariffs. From Republicans. Yeah, imagine noise from Republicans if Biden had done tariffs. Yes. I mean, it just shows you how the extent to which they're unthinking is that they will just do what their leader tells them. So, and by the way, the same thing is true on the flip side. Like Bernie Sanders, who has never seen a tax or a tariff he didn't like, hates tariffs now. He's a free trader suddenly. So much of what happens in Washington, so much of what these people say is pure politics and has nothing, nada, zero to do with economics, with what they believe, with what they think. It's all about manipulating their voters and opposing the other side. It's being anti the other side. Harper Campbell. Trump is an economic caveman. Too many think that business success and economic wisdom go hand in hand, whereas they aren't even correlated, or if they are, then often negatively. Well, I mean, in Trump's case, his business success is questionable. That is, given the amount of money he inherited, it's not clear that his returns are that good. He probably just got market returns, which anybody could have inherited that money, invested in real estate in Manhattan, probably done just as well. So it's not clear he's that good as a businessman. But I agree with you that they're not correlated. Harper Campbell. Tim Pool made a video called Tariffs Are Working. It highlights how Canadians are getting laid off in record numbers. Ayn Rand's villains are not unrealistically evil. Yes. So note here that the suffering of the Canadians is somehow good. Yes. Tariffs between U.S. and Canada are more hurtful for Canada than they are for the U.S. No question about that. Canada is a small economy. They rely more on trade than we do. But we suffer too. Just they suffer more. You go from win-win of trade to lose-lose of tariffs. And to celebrate the losses of your friends? Canada is not, in spite of what Trump says, in spite of what Vance says, in spite of what all these people say, Canada is not an enemy of the United States. Remember how Trump treated an enemy of the United States? You remember Kim Jong-il, the brutal dictator, brutal murderous dictator of North Korea? Remember him? He became Trump's best friend. They were buddies. And yet, his country has nukes targeted at California. And he's an evil, evil, evil human being. But no. Him, Trump can love. Canada, no, we have to hate those guys. We have to hate them. They're the real enemy. It's just, he's completely turned the world upside down. And again, he's made the unreal his governing principle. The unreal. And lie. make unreal statements over and over again, and then whoop, here they come. They all believe it. They all accept it. Clark says, what's the difference between a fascist and a populist? Which is Trump? I mean, Trump is a populist who'd like to be a fascist. Populism is basically just appeasing the masses. It's feeding the masses red meat. It's feeding the masses what they want. Fascism, it's not a political philosophy. It's not a political ideology. Fascism is a particular political ideology articulated by Mussolini, and it definitely includes strongman rule, no elections. You can be a populist and a Democrat, or at least a populist with the some democratic features. Many of Latin Americans strongmen were populist. They didn't have a clear ideology. They swayed with the masses. They swayed with the people. They did a lot of harm to the people, but they always presented it as doing harm in an effort to do them well, and they always blamed the harm on some other factor, on some external factor. That's part of what authoritarians do. The other is always at fault. Some external force, the Chinese, the Jews, the Mexicans, the immigrants, the elites. That's populism. Fascism is a much more coherent ideology, which is a much more systematic approach to governing. Badly and evilly, but systematically. Okay, Andrew, in Rand's HUAC testimony, a cowardly congressman supported movies that whitewashed communist Russia to gain the support of the public for the alliance in World War II. To put it mildly, Rand disagreed with that manipulation. Yes, the idea was we need Hollywood to make pro-communism movies so that the public will support the fact that we've allied with the communists in fighting the Nazis. Now, I don't think America should have ever allied with the communists, even to fight the Nazis. And Ayn Rand never thought that. She thought that if America hadn't helped Russia, then by the end of the war, both Russia and Germany would have been defeated, because they'd both be so weakened by fighting each other that we would all be better off. And I think absolutely she was right. So, yeah, she very much disagreed with allying with Russia, and she definitely disagreed with making movies that were pro-communist. Jason, will you reduce your hourly goals by 10% to offset the tariffs? No, I'm going to increase my goals to offset my increase in cost of living. Or something. Thanks, Jason. Liam, there are currently no adults in the room to stop Trump. I told you that his first administration was full of adults because he didn't have time to cultivate a MAGA, leadership team, a MAGA team of cronies. I told you this time he would surround himself by cronies, surround himself by yes men, and there'll be no adults in the room. Liam continues, will adults eventually enter the room? I don't see where they'll come from. Will Congress shut down this insanity? I don't see why. Unless we spiral into depression, really, really bad recession, and then maybe a few Republicans will get some balls to stand up for Trump. I don't see anything short of that. Liam, I applaud Ben Shapiro for being the first major right-wing commentator to criticize Trump. Will more follow? I doubt it. I think Ben Shapiro's always had an element of independent thinking. So I was most hopeful about him. Maybe Jordan Peterson will say something critical about Trump, maybe. I'm not sure who else there will be. I don't know who else is influential on the right. Hopper Campbell, is MAGA's base nihilistic want to see rich people with stocks knocked down? Yeah, they're talking about that. You know who's losing money in the stock market? Globalists. Globalists. You know, those monsters who eat babies. Globalists. Yeah, I think they want to see these people lose money because they view them as mostly, on the left, they view them as mostly rich. They view them as somehow anti-American, and they're willing to go with it. So you say, is MAGA baseline base nihilistic and wants to see rich people and stocks knocked down? I think to some extent, but it's going to hurt their 401ks, and they're not going to like it then. Their own pensions will suffer, and they won't like that. I assume most of his white trash base don't have mutual funds. Many of them do, because many of them, they might be in unions, and the union pension is in mutual funds, or in hedge funds, or in private equity funds that are all going to get hit ultimately. I think that many middle class and working class people work for companies that provide them 401ks. So no, I think they're all getting hurt. It's not yet real to people. Jennifer says, I have been saving to buy a new car in cash, maybe a Nissan, in a couple of years now, in a couple of years. Now that might not happen. I hate Trump. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense to buy a used car now rather than wait 2 years to buy a new car. Because used cars now probably haven't been, it's not priced. The fact that their price is going to go up as the tariffs kick in is probably not priced in their values. And now, 2 weeks ago, my son bought a BMW a couple of weeks ago, used. And that was probably an amazing purchase, because I think that car's value has gone up instantly quite a bit, and it's going to go up a huge amount more in the future. By the way, globalism is a package deal. It's an illegitimate concept. There's no such thing as a globalist. There's globalization, which means an increase in global trade. That's a good thing. And then they also wrap into globalism, global governance, world government, giving a lot of power to the United Nations. But people who want to give the United Nations a lot of power don't want free trade necessarily. So it's just a package deal. I am all for globalization, free trade, unilateral free trade, but I'm against global governance. But it doesn't bother them. Concepts don't really mean anything in their world. Simon, thoughts on Knowles saying Ayn Rand wasn't a serious thinker and on a list of philosophers put her below Marx? Would love a Yaron Destroys Knowles video. I'll have to check that out. But, I mean, all you have to say is Knowles has a list of philosophers. I mean, by what standard? By what standard should you take Knowles seriously about anything he says? I mean, I'm shocked that you're watching Knowles at all. But this is a guy who wants the culture of 1220. This is a person who would cheer a theocracy in the United States. This is a person who has no respect for individual rights, who is not a particularly good thinker. So, what does he know? What does he understand? And what is why a philosophy? And why would you place any semblance of legitimacy to his ranking of philosophers? And based on what? What's he ranking them based on? Truth? So I'm curious who he's got number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would be a great show. I'll have to look into that. Knowles' ranking of philosophers. I'll check out that video. I assume it's on YouTube. I can watch it on YouTube. I'll check it out. Hopper Campbell, is this about nihilistic smashing down of institutions, or is Trump playing political lobby games and this is all about control for him? I think it's all of the above. I think it's control. I think he loves the fact that everybody's going to come groveling and kissing the ring to try to get favors from him, exclusions from the tariffs. I think the fact that every world leader is calling him up, oh, we can lower tariffs, we can do this, let's cut a deal. He loves that. He loves that tension. He wants the auto industry to lobby him, the steel industry to lobby him. He wants all that. But it's also nihilistic, and it's also ignorance. He also believes that tariffs are bad. The tariffs are good. Sorry, tariffs are good. He believes trade deficits are bad. He really does believe it. So It's a combination of all of the above. Gail, I think all those lies from lots of different people just makes people stick their heads in the sand because they cannot determine truth. Yes, but what does that mean? When you stick your head in the sand, you're supporting the worst. You're basically granting your sanction in support of the worst elements. You're allowing them the freedom to perpetuate their lies. And that's what and you become more and more afraid, and therefore more and more susceptible to their lies. So it all spirals into oblivion, the abyss, danger. Okay. That doodle bunny, J.D. Vance doesn't have a chance if Trump acts like a wrecking ball for the entire 4 years of his term. I think many people who voted for Trump have really turned on him behind closed doors. I think the more intelligent people who voted for Trump are turning on him. I think that's right. I think the MAGA unintelligent people are probably have not turned on him. Certainly not yet. Ollie W. Economically and practically, why are trade deficits irrelevant? They're irrelevant for the same reason your trade deficit with the grocery store is irrelevant. They're irrelevant because individuals trade, countries don't. So if I buy something from the Chinese guy and a Chinese goods flow into the United States and my money flows to the United States, what relevance does that have to anything? And if you add the fact that the currency that flows out of the United States, the dollars, really the bits, right? It's all digital today. It has to be brought back into the United States because you can't use dollars. You can use dollars to buy some stuff in the world, but in the end, the investments and the stuff you really want, you use dollars for is in the U.S. So the money flows back, and the money flows back primarily as investments. So if you take the trade deficit and the trade deficit, and then you look at the investment surplus. So how many dollars do Americans invest in foreign countries versus how many dollars the people in foreign countries invest in America? There we have a massive surplus. More people invest in America than American invest outside of America. And the two equal out. They equal out because in the end of the day, every dollar that is sent out there to buy stuff has to come back. But think of it in another way. And this is all economically and practically. Economics is practice. You're sending, when you buy stuff from Canada, you're sending the Canadians dollars, paper money, fiat money. And what you get instead of it is stuff, oil or auto parts. At the end of the day, what has more value, stuff or paper money? Well, stuff. So there's no way you're losing by it. Going back to the fact that all trade is individuals. Why are individuals trading? Why is a Canadian and American trading? Because both are better off by trade. So, and now you're taxing that. When you tax something, you get less of it. If you tax trade, you get less trade. So you get less win-win situations. Why is that good? How is that good? So all of that. Plus, you can just do Yaron Brook trade, and you can see whole videos I've done just on that. It's a little late here. We're past midnight now, so I'm still a lot of questions. We'll go through these. It looks like the Republicans and Democrats in Congress are uniting to stop Trump's tariffs, but they are treading softly and walking on eggshells. Yes, and they don't have enough numbers. Not enough Republicans are willing to do it. And of course, they're doing it in the Senate, but it's not clear they can do it in the House. It's not clear that the House leadership, who's Republican, will even bring it to a vote. That's how cowardly they are. So I don't think Congress will do anything unless things get really, really, really bad. Ryan, Trump just wants to feel like a big man. He doesn't care one iota what the collateral damage is. I think that's part of the nihilism. He wants to be big he drove the stock market down 15%. Look how strong he is. Not everybody can drive the stock market down that much. Look how he's getting all these CEOs and all these world leaders to call him up and grovel. Andrew, does your opposition to tariff reciprocity connect with your argument against equality and equal is unfair? I mean, yes, but it's yes in some way, but that's not the fundamental. The fundamental is that, if I shoot myself in the knee, why should you shoot yourself in your knee? If I do damage to myself, why should you do damage to yourself? It's much more related to that idea. That reciprocity is you're doing something bad, I should do something bad. There's a second-handedness of vice here. Bonnie, Trump is a dinosaur. Today, everything is made everywhere. Yes, Cadbury, the good British chocolate maker, is multinational, like so many others. It's a farce. Yeah, but at the end of the day, the stuff comes from somewhere to somewhere, and it's going to be taxed when it enters the United States. Robert says, happy birthday, Amy. Amy, it's today's birthday? Today's, Marilyn also says, happy birthday, Amy Nasir. So Amy has the same birthday as my dad. My dad celebrated today his 90th, 90 birthday. We had a party. That's why I said I was out partying. We had a party for him 2 days ago for his 90th birthday. And my mom was 85, so it was quite something. Quite an achievement to get to that age. And quite an achievement to have, a real loving, successful family and a huge number of friends who came and celebrated with them. So good for them. It was fun. Neo, can manufacturing in America be possible if it was all robots doing it? Will it be cheaper then? Well, I mean, to some extent, but electricity is not that cheap in the US. Now, maybe the deregulation will make it cheap. The electricity has to run the robots. Somebody has to make the robots. If the robots are also made in America by robots, I don't know. I mean, manufacturing in the U.S. is expensive. The land is expensive. Equipment is expensive. It's expensive. And whatever people you have are expensive. But yes, robotics make it less expensive relative to other places. Greg says, Life from Israel, music to process taxes by. Taxes is a while still. Music to process taxes by. All right. Andrew, if people wanted to learn that freedom begets strength, prosperity, and peace, they would have done so by now. People aren't morally ready for freedom. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Morally, cognitively, epistemologically, they're not ready for freedom. Paul, do you have any public events planned while in Israel? I'm in Israel too, would love to see you again. I did one that was public on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. Or Wednesday, whatever. Wednesday. I did one on Wednesday. So sorry, no more. I did that event and then I did some podcasts. Next time. Sorry, Paul. Sorry I missed you. Andrew, when's the last time Trump working class warrior had to check a price tag? Maybe that's partly why he couldn't care less. As usual, the middle lower classes will suffer most from status policies. Yes, Trump's policies will hurt his voters more than anybody else. Chandler, how should the state handle child abuse? Is teaching your child that they will go to hell child abuse? So the state, I think, can only really handle, penalize physical abuse. It cannot penalize abuse of bad ideas. It cannot penalize the idea of hell. It cannot penalize teaching your kids that communism is good, or that Islam is good, or that Christianity is good. The government cannot get in the business of ideas. So what it can do, and the only thing it can do, is penalize physical violence against a child. Now, it's possible that it would be considered child abuse not to provide a child with basic education, writing, reading, math. That if somebody didn't provide a child with that, maybe the state could intervene and view that as child abuse. But that's it. As soon as you get into more than that, the state has no business in it. As sad as it is that some parents teach kids horrible, horrible things. Kim says, my Yaron withdrawals have been cured. I am glad to be a cure for your ills, whatever they happen to be. Esoteric dichotomy. Is a lot of this an education issue? People don't understand markets, investing, trade, taxes, wealth. So much ignorance across all levels of society. Yeah, but I think it's a chosen ignorance. People choose not to understand it. People choose not to learn from experience. People choose not to look around the world and see what works and what doesn't. People choose not to follow along as you explain the win-win relationship that is trade. So I don't think it's an innocent ignorance. I think it's a immorally infused ignorance, an evasion-infused ignorance. Friend Harper, more people need to read your Free Market Revolution of Finance books as well as Econ in One Lesson. Equal is Unfair is also amazing, but probably not on the theme of tariffs problem. Yeah, I think Free Market Revolution is definitely, and people need to read Capitalism, Not an Ideal and Atlas Shrugged. I mean, this Liberation Day is straight out of Atlas Shrugged. It's straight out of Atlas Shrugged. Let's liberate you by taxing you more. Let's liberate you by constraining your choices more. Let's liberate you by enslaving you just a little bit more. It's straight out of Atlas Shrugged. All right, last few questions. Feel free to jump in with some stickers. I'm fading, so maybe questions is not a great time. Michael, did you see Obama just came out today and said, imagine if I had done any of this? That's pretty funny. Everyone on the right would have called him a socialist, and when Trump does socialism, it's for de-chess capitalism. Exactly, absolutely. Mary Elaine, what would be the best grounds for impeaching and convicting Trump if Congress had the courage to do it? Well, I think it would be his complete disregard for the Constitution, his willingness to deport people who have not broken the law, his willingness to grant his pardons, some of his pardons to January 6th and others that clearly have no basis in what the pardons were intended to do, his willingness to go after law firms with an executive order, his personal vendettas, all of that should be impeachable because it's all against the Constitution. Hookham, to what extent does the involvement of government in business become oligarchic? Is it when it explicitly picks the winners and losers, when its thumb is on the scale in favor but not quite outgoing the products of business? I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's a rule. I think what you have to do is look and see, are the people who are today America's billionaires, are they billionaires because of government? It's somewhat. I mean, the government controls the money supply, the government controls regulations, but not for the most part. Amazon is not a product directly of government. It's not. It was not given any favors by government. Tesla maybe, but Microsoft, Apple, no. So the rich people are not rich because primarily of government, but primarily because of entrepreneurial skill. That's not oligarchical, if you will, oligarchic or whatever you want to call it. So I think you have to. There's no fast rule, but you have to just look at case by case. Is this person the same as what Putin does or what's being done in Eastern Europe, where people were handed over whole industries and were protected from competition by government? Now, there's a little bit of that in the United States, but not on a scale yet to sway it to such an extent that now I would call them oligarchs. John, it's great that you could be with your father on his 90th birthday. Yes, it was. Thank you. I appreciate that, John. It was. It was very nice. Michael, buy America to avoid tariffs. Feels like get the vaccine or lose your job from 4 years ago. Same slogan, different cult. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, now it's the cult doing it. But yeah, I like that, right? Lower your standard of living to buy tariffs. I mean, think about what they're saying now. Accept a recession so that we can bring manufacturing jobs to America. So again, lower your standard of living, sacrifice, so we can achieve some greater good that who decided? Who decided manufacturing was good? Manufacturing jobs were good? Manufacturing should be brought to America? Who decided on any of that? The central planners, our philosopher kings, our rulers decided that. And we should just follow along. We should just accept it and accept the pain involved in it. Absolutely, because sacrifice is noble. Sacrifice is good. All right. On that wonderful note, we will call it a night. It's 12:20 a.m. here. If anybody wants to jump in with a sticker just to get us, oh, Andrew has another question. Figure after midnight is a good time to ask what is the purpose of life. He's joking. Purpose of life is very easy. The purpose of life is to live. And I say live with a, you guys should know this, with a capital L. With a capital L. Rand did have a good one-line answer, though. Life is the purpose of life. Yes, to live. Life is the purpose of life. To live, to succeed, to achieve, to flourish, to be happy. That is the purpose of life. There's no greater purpose than that. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. We will see. Not on Monday, probably. Certainly not on Tuesday. Anyway, have a great week. Maybe see you tomorrow. If not, certainly see you on Wednesday. And looking back to getting back home. That'll be fun. All right, being on the road 2 weeks? 2 weeks to the day today. I left Saturday 2 weeks ago. Bye, everybody. Don't forget, like the show before you leave. Please like the show. There should be well over 100 likes. Come on, guys. 137. It should be 200 likes. There were 200 people watching throughout, which means there were 800 people total. And don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And don't forget to support the show on Patreon. And Rajesh, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate the rupees. That was from India, rupees. Appreciate the Indian rupees.